Belinda would ride with her crazy husband driving, and she started hallucinating and memory loss. They stuck her in a nursing home. She said, if you want to lose weight, go to Am South. She went in at about 185 and came out 135. But there's a doctor in Birmingham that puts shunts in and drains the fluid out.
Yeah.
And her daughter-in-law took her there. And then Belinda, we said she remembered things that never happened. She was sitting at my table in there. She used to sell this little grit magazine for a nickel.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, Shell Culbert owes me $1.65. That's 30 weeks of the thing. And Cousin Blue says, you might as well forget him. He's been dead for decades. But she remembered that.
Wow.
And I have a little fluid. One day there was a boat down at the boat shop, and I banged my husband in my head, and the CAT scan shows if I got more, I'd have more memory loss.
Wow.
But we went to school together in the schoolhouse out there.
Mm-hmm.
We had wonderful times at Halloween, although they had a room where they had I guess it was spaghetti that was to represent the intestines. I was not in the military room. And at Christmas, we'd have a Christmas tree, and we drew names, but also the community would buy a Christmas present for each of us. And we had, when we started having in 91, we started having community picnics here.
Mm-hmm.
I was in charge of the Historical Society then, and we'd have them down on the dock, and the people would come. The families of Cortez have disappeared. There are 5 of us living in our families' houses. There are 6 or 7 more that are living in their in-laws' families with them. But all the families, and in the book, Cortez Then and Now, I have a family, it's labeled Cortez Families. When I did, first grant was $5,000 to do a community portrait in 1984. And I interviewed someone from every family here with an interview form that a humanities professor had okayed. It was from the Florida Endowment for the Humanities, so I had to have one of them, and I got 2 of them. And on what was the most family fun, making homemade ice cream. We made ice cream every Saturday night, and with a freezer where you had to grind it, and when it got a little bit hard, then you put the fruit in it. And one time we made ice cream here, and we were about ready to eat it, and little Ralph, who was 3 years younger than I, is walking around. He couldn't find his harmonica. We got down to the bottom of the ice cream freezer. There was his harmonica. See, when it gets semi-soft, then you put the fruit in, and evidently he had dropped it in there. And I said we had harmonica ice cream. But the families were close and helped each other. We had several events. We had the influenza. That was a pandemic. More people died of influenza than died in World War I. And the big houses, the females were bedded down, and another big house, the males, and the teenagers would go and help feed them and bathe them and that kind of thing. Only 2 people died. One was my great uncle Clyde, the first son of Sally and William Fulford. And he left a widow. He had an insurance policy. Her name was Mamie. And 3 sons, 2 sons and a daughter. And Gray and Eugene and Margaret. And Mamie took the insurance money and built a house. If you're a widow in Cortez, you either take in washing or you take in boarders. And she took in boarders. And her house is still standing. It's interesting to see it. Back before the war with Japan, our screen doors had a little round thing here and then spikes that went up. Looked like the rising sun, we said later. Everybody had a screen door like that. and everybody but Aunt Mamie took down their screen door and destroyed it when we started the war with Japan. And she either didn't hear about it, or the screen door is still on the house that she owned over there. The houses have survived. There's one house that a man burned that his mother was living in. It was one of the historic houses. In 1995, well, I'll say, working together, this village has survived. In '84, we, mainly the members of the Cortez Village Historical Society, stopped Chris Craft from building a marina on the end of the, over here on the peninsula. The piers would have been out 145 feet, and it would have blocked the channel. The fishing boats could not get in. It was a done deal when we heard about it. J.B. Crawford has written a book called Cortez Village, and he says it was a done deal, but they stopped it. Well, Linda and I are writing the book now, Little Village That Could and Did. I'm telling the people's story. I walked out the door one day, and Alcy, who lived in the big house over there, said, Linda was here this weekend. Linda was born in Cortez. She was married to a military man. In fact, she invited me to come visit them when they lived in Korea, and I kind of wish I had. Alcy said she's working for the Army Corps of Engineers. See, they had issued a permit for it too. The Planning Commission, the County Commission, DNR, Army Corps of Engineers, before we heard about it. We didn't hear about it until they started buying up the next street for parking, and Stanley Guthrie got a permit notice, and he invited my niece to go with him to the Planning Commission. And the next day she said, Aunt Mary, what is that Planning Commission? I went with Smiley, that was his nickname, and everybody in Cortez has got a nickname. And they were so rude to us. And then we started looking into what was happening. And we didn't know what to do, because it was a done deal, until she told me, Linda works for the Army Corps of Engineers in Jacksonville. I sent her all the newspaper clippings. She went in and threw them up on her boss's desk. He was a friend of hers, and said, this is my hometown. Looking over them, the David Clement, the editorial page was for us. My son Ben, who writes, he's had 4 books. He wrote 6 letters to the editor citing them people's names, and David put them in the newspaper. Front page was for Chris Craft and the Chamber of Commerce and all the hot shots. She said, this is my hometown. We set up a speaker phone in Fulford Fish Office. Cousin Walter sent over his boat captain. I introduced them. The first one was Soupy Davis. Soupy just turned 89 this year. They play music on the porch out at the museum, and Soupy's there playing music. He's still going. The man in Jacksonville said, Captain Davis, what does your boat draw? I said, I don't know what that means, and I don't intend to learn. But on the basis of his interviews, he pulled the Army Corps' permit. It all came tumbling down. We got Cortez on the National Register of Historic Places March 16, 1995, with 97 historic structures. The Historical Society did that. We hired first I got $1,000 grant. We hired somebody, he identified 50 buildings. And then we were to get a $3,000 grant. We put another $1,800 in it. And this new to us guy identified the other buildings. He was supposed to fill out the application. When I went to Tallahassee, I said, Mary, you're going to get the money, but the application, it's a mess. Well, I was a teacher, and when you're in education, I will contend any form you can design, I can fill out. So with a consultant, I filled it out. I went to Tallahassee with a committee. They told me I could do 10 slides to do it. And my daughter then was a member of the county commission, and she came to the meeting. And on the basis of that, they sent it on to DC. The woman who chaired that meeting is Janet Matthews. She wrote a book, Edge of Wilderness. A couple months ago, I was in a newspaper interview. Janet now is a professor at the University of Florida. She got that newspaper. She sent it to me. She had recognized me, and she talks about my tenacity. I am mailing her a copy of Cortez Then and Now. But it was March 16th. That's the birthday of William Thomas Fulford, the grandfather who bought the first tract of land in here. Now, before us, the natives that lived here, they lived right here. They fished that bay right out there. They buried their dead on Tahiti Island. They threw all their shells at across the street, and there's a little bit of that shell mound left.
Really?
But not on some of our islands. There are much, much bigger ones left. The first road, and most of the roads in Florida were probably made from the shells from the middens where they had put all of their shells with them. We had one man here who collected a lot of stuff. He didn't go to worship. His wife did. So he'd take the boys and go digging. He has skulls. He had shells. He's in our movie, commercial movie, New Century. And I said, you're not going to be in it if you don't show us something. So he brought the big old cock that he put a handle on it that he used with a hammer to clean it. I don't know what's happening to his collection. The Spanish brought over like beads to trade with the natives.
Mm-hmm.
And downtown museum maybe has 6 or 7. He had about 11 under it. But one, he said he was leaving to his son. And where, if you're happy and you're not sing, come on, Lucas, sing with Gigi. Here, look.
That's what he needed. Can you tell me, I heard that your dad, Tink, kept all the boys busy around here, and the girls too, with chores when they were younger. What was the kind of stuff he had them doing?
He was a workaholic, and he loved work. The Bible says 2 or 3 times, love of work is a gift from God. Hopefully you love your work. You do it even if you get paid for it. My daddy loved his work. He jumped out of that one-room schoolhouse one day and came down here to the shore to have his own boat and crew when he was 14. He built a little bridge out, see the channel was far out. So he put a little house out there, put tar in it, called it the tar house. That was his first fish house. There was a 1921 storm, a 100-year storm. Everything on the waterfront was destroyed. There were fish docks there that Severies and another fish wholesaler from Tampa had here, and they bought the fish and carried them to Tampa. Everything, there was a house out there was a store out there, all their net spreads, their boats, unless they put them somewhere, except the hotel, and the porch of it was destroyed. All the houses were washed off their blocks. I thought, oh, no big deal, you just put them back on. But Doris Green, in her book, Fall Coming In, she was 6. They were living in the old one-room schoolhouse was their house. The big 2-story house across the street. And I guess Uncle Willis said, we need to get over there to the Taylor house. They walk out the door. The house washed off its blocks. It's down on the ground. Women waded waist-high water to put their babies in boats to take them to the schoolhouse. The schoolhouse, the big brick schoolhouse, was the highest building here. I don't know if the big house next door washed off its blocks or not, but the water would have been inside because it was a woman across the street that had the 2-month-old baby, waist-high water. There are 2 cabbage palms, or sable palms. they were in 1921, but 19-year-old Tink says that's how high the water came. Grandpa was out in his boat, and he just ran it on into the water and tied it up at the first church building here, which there is a picture of it in my book, Cortez Then and Now. And I think they must have had a meeting. Are we going to rebuild? What are we going to do? The fish dealers are gone. I don't know if they wanted to go back to North Carolina. I don't know what the women wanted to do. But they banded together. They went to Braden. They borrowed money. In fact, that's when the Church of God decided to build its own church building in 1922. Before, there was a church building that alternated services with the Church of Christ. And so they rebuilt. The fishermen then had their own fish house. The first was Jess Williams. He built Cortez Fish House. His great-grandson, John Banyas, now owns Cortez Bait and Seafood over here. The first boat builder in here was Neary Taylor. The big house that's over here at the end of the street was built from lumber salvaged from a house that had been badly damaged somewhere else. It's the first house I ever went into where there weren't studs still there without the outside. We call that ceiling, but it's the paneling on it. And he had a boat building shop there. He is the great-grandfather of John Banyas, who has boat repair down there. Johnny and A.P. Bell are now for business, and they hate each other. And John Banyas, for $860,000, just bought the Cortez post office complex. There's a post office, and there's a fish house, fish market there now. What was the laundromat is now a fish market. I want to write a column, but my computer is down. It said, where is Cortez? With that, we were never hungry. We survived the pandemic of flu, the going off to the war for World War I, then the Great Depression. We say that nobody from Cortez ever accepted any welfare money. One guy said he went up there to apply, and there were all these big cars sitting out there, and what are people with big cars begging money for? So he didn't go in. We ate fish every night during the week. Somehow or another, Mama had roast, and she raised chickens for Saturday and Sunday. One night I'd put ketchup on the fish. The next night Mama would saute onions on it. I might eat it plain or then mix it up in the grits. And I say to you, fish is good brain food. This gal ate it and graduated valedictorian in a class of 145. When we went back for the reunion, they said, oh, you're the one with the long red curly hair that made the good grades, which is interesting. Then, you see, you felt safe. I'd go up to my cousin Jerry's, and after dark, she'd walk me halfway home, and then she'd go back. But we knew everybody. We were protected that way with it. There might have been one person that was not, you didn't feel safe. There was a guy, and they ran him out of town because he wasn't fishing, and he was prowling around the women, and he left. And he came back when he was an old man. He said they probably said that you were like the boogeyman. They called him by name with it. And then, as I said, the influenza, the sharing, and then the tragedies. What was the greatest tragedy? There was a girl, 4th of July, lying on the beach. You could drive cars over there then. And this man drove over her. He stopped and picked her up. If he had not done that, she might have lived. You know, it might have been just a broken back, but when you pick up, the bone would then sever the spinal cord.
Yeah.
In my interview, they all listed that. Then there was a woman who came to visit, and her little boy had been down here probably with his grandpa, and somebody was supposed to watch him. She was out scalloping, and he came down here by himself and fell overboard down here. And then there was the boat explosion in which my uncle died in that, and then World War II, when they all went off to war with it. But we had 3 midwives, and one was Miss Nola Taylor. She was here at this house when I was 6 years old, when my 85-year-old sister was born. She was here when I was 15 years old, when Anna Dean was born. Gary was born in the hospital. I don't think Wayne was born in the hospital. Now, you hear Wayne complaining about working, having to come and pull up the weeds. Do you know what he did as a pastime over there in his house? He had a little stool, and he'd get out there pulling up the weeds. So, as I said, my father worked, and he made a lot of money, so he could send us to school, and we were never hungry, and we always had clothes. Mama sewed them, or I tell the story. I went to work for my uncle. His wife had had a baby, and the nurse came down to take care of her, but they had a 3-year-old. I had to open Campbell's soup for him and wash diapers. I worked 2 weeks. I got paid. I went to the $5 limit store in Braid. I wrote this in a letter to the editor, and bought a dress. I spent my whole salary on it, $1. When I wrote that letter, then they were doing a movie on Bell's Department Store. Started here in Bradenton. Now it's all over. Multi-billion-dollar operation. Yeah. And so they sent me an invitation. They were having a movie and a luncheon, but he forgot to send me something written, and I'd given my car away then, so I could call JB and say, hey, I'll take you and we will go. But that was fun.
I'm going to have to get going, because I promised them I would only do 1 camera full, and it's